What's going on, travel family? Happy Tuesday to you. You are now listening to another broadcast from Point Noir, home of the Point Noir podcast, where we inspire and encourage men of color to craft their life story through travel. As always, I'm your host and guide, Jerry the.3rd, aka the one and only Kimono Jack, and I'm so glad you're here with us for our 30th session of the Point Noir podcast. Dirty 30 session. Y'all ready? Like, we getting grown now. Glad you guys are here with us as always. Thank you to people who've been listening since the beginning, and thank you so much to all the new listeners. I see y'all out there. I see you guys sliding in the DMs at Point Noir Show on IG. I really appreciate it. And just in case you didn't get the memo, we sponsor a man of color to get his passport every single month. Just had our December winner, and of course, we're looking for our January winner. So if you need more details on that, hit us up at the IG page at Point Noir Show, and we'll definitely give you all the information you need. Just check out the highlights. It says passport, and you have all the details right there. So without further ado, let's introduce today's special guest. Joining us today as our special guest at The Point is Brian Oliver, aka Beyond Be More. Make sure you check him out on Instagram at Beyond Be More, or check out his personal website, beyondbemore.com. Now, as his name implies, he's from the Baltimore area, but he has definitely expanded his horizons well beyond the city to become a world traveler. And not only that, he's filling up his passport book with stamps, but he's pulling back perspectives and context about the history, the culture, the people, everything he sees. He's spending time to think about it. So I really appreciate that he could spend some time with us to share all these unique perspectives on travel and living and just how to progress yourself in life. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So as always, you know what? We're going to do a different order. Pick your refreshing beverage of choice now. Beverage of choice, let me correct myself. Find a comfy, cozy spot, and then enjoy the session, because I definitely know you will love this one. I'll see you guys on the flip side. What's going on, Brian? How you feeling, fam? Thanks so much for joining us today at Point Noir.
I'm pretty good, man. What about you? I'm happy to be here.
Man, I'm easy. Glad we can get you on the call, because you have recently become a very popular traveler in the past couple weeks.
Yeah, I don't know about all that popular stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's been a busy few last couple of weeks.
Right. And for those who might not be following along in the timeline, or who might listen to this later in the future, you got a pretty cool piece, actually two pieces done on you. One of them by the local news outlet, a local news magazine, right?
Right. Yeah. Baltimore magazine.
That's what's up. And your handle's Beyond Be More. So, I mean, you really throwing down for the city.
Yeah, I got to represent home.
Hey, that's what's up. We respect that. So let's jump into it, bro. How did you start adventuring? What attracted you to traveling? You've been quite active. How did you get started?
So I always tell everybody, I started off as a kid on road trips with my granddad all the time. He's a minister, so he would be traveling pretty often. And I was with him all the time. He used to watch me when I was younger and everything, when he was available. So we'd take road trips, went on a few trips with my parents. I think I can remember specifically catching the Amtrak to Greensboro because my dad had family there.
Okay.
And we would go to Cleveland as well to visit some family. And,
from Baltimore? You guys were based in Baltimore. Okay, so you're born and raised. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I always had that curiosity for seeing the world. And then when I would read the books or see pictures of other countries while I was in school, you always had that thought like, oh, man, I would love to go here. And you just had that false assumption that it was too expensive, or, like you just have to do it when you were much older in life, probably like retired or something like that. But
right.
I mean, back then it was a lot more expensive than it is now, and it was not as easy. Times have changed.
Right. Okay. So you started exploring domestically, which I love when people who have a lot of travel experience share that, they value their early domestic experiences. Could you speak to any of those? I know you were young. Did any of those stand out? The difference between North Carolina, Baltimore, and, Cleveland. You might be able to see some differences as a kid.
Well, I mean, I remember going to, I used to go to Virginia a lot in the summer, specifically like Newport News, Hampton area. And I always picked up that it was a lot slower paced than home.
Right.
And,
right.
It was way more relaxed. It's quiet the further you go down south. in a lot of
Right.
places. And I just noticed how everyone was a lot more chill, kind of calm, not in a rush, which is exactly the same way it seems to be when you go on the West Coast. Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
way more laid back, and on the East Coast, it's like everybody's rushing.
That East Coast hustle, baby.
Yeah,
Like, I love
it's
it.
like no time to waste. Everybody's driving fast. Everybody's walking down the street fast, and then you go to California, and everyone's just walking around with this unconcerned look on their faces, as if like life has no problems at the moment.
Right.
So
Smiling at strangers and shit. Like, I don't know you.
right, I mean, it's just like, damn, I wish I could be like you and wake up, and just feel like, oh, I don't have any worries today. And I think, of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that, I mean, we're 3 hours ahead of them on the East Coast. So if there's an
Mm.
emergency or something that had to get done quick, by the time they wake up, it's already handled. So it's like,
That's funny.
oh, this had to get done at the start of business, but, they were asleep. So it was already
Right.
handled by someone on the East Coast. But traveling domestically, I started off like going to different cities with my family, and then the older I got and got a little more independent, I would go with my friends.
Okay.
I remember we fell in love with Chicago the first time we went. Then we went to like Atlanta, different places, Boston. That will definitely have you curious to see other countries once you go to different cities in the U.S. And just to, the whole public transportation system in different cities and, the restaurant and bar scene, just everything. It just makes your curiosity go up 10 times more because you're like, wait a minute, this, city is close to me and yet so different. So what is another country going to be like?
Right. With another language, with different food. Yeah, that's real.
Right. And navigating, I always encourage everyone who says they want to travel to first go somewhere within the US because if they want to go solo, because I'm like, test yourself. Even, I mean, Baltimore and New York City are two different worlds. So I tell people, take a trip to New York one weekend by yourself. Use your phone to get around. I know most people are like, they don't like to get on the subway in New York and everything, but I'm like, this is going to determine if you're really ready to travel. So I'm like,
Mm.
when you get there, don't get in the cab, don't use Uber, get the subway directions on your phone,
Right.
do everything alone on your own that weekend. And I think once you do something like that, you come back home and you're like, all right, where am I going next?
Right. So you can kind of cultivate those skills in an environment where the difficulty is not too high. You at least have cell service. If you
Right,
go to
right,
New
right.
York, all the signage and stuff is in English.
English,
You
right.
can ask somebody for directions even if you really wanted to.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's really practical and useful. And you're right, man. All these big major hubs. I mean, I grew up. I remember my first time going to Chicago when it was still called the Sears Tower because we had family out there. But Chicago
Right.
felt way different, even if it was just the temperature. Like it was cold for real in Chicago versus the suburbs of Philadelphia. So yeah, I think that's great advice, and it's practical to go visit a big city and just rely on what you have. Be resourceful.
Yeah, we've never gone to I mean, I've never gone to Chicago when it's cold. And that's the funny thing about me as well. I pretty much base my trips around avoiding very, very cold destinations, even though it's happened sometimes. But I'm just not a big fan of winter and cold environments. But I see some of the people's posts and their photos when they're, in Switzerland in the middle of winter and everything. And I'm like, this looks amazing. But I'm still like, I don't know if I'm built for that yet.
I mean, I think you got it. It's just what attracts you about the place. Like Iceland is cool because you have that cold, but then you also have all the natural springs and stuff like that. Or
Right.
I think not a lot of people just like hanging out in the cold. I do, but I also like to be well prepared, and I'm not strapped with all that equipment right now. Um,
Nah.
you really need a goose jacket. You really need stuff that can handle extreme
Everything down. I
temperatures.
mean, to your shoes, it's got to be right.
Your
And I'm
socks,
like,
bro.
yeah,
Multiple pairs of
yeah.
wool socks.
I'm like, I don't even think I'm prepared to even want to be bothered with this.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to work off the arbitrage. You guys, keep hyping up these warm locations, and I love the islands, but that means these cold areas going to stay cheap, and we're gonna kick it. Those are the
Yeah,
type of areas where you don't need refrigeration. You could just leave your whiskey outside, and by the time
leave
you
it
come back
outside.
in, you good. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? People
yeah.
don't be thinking about that. This shit don't happen in the summertime.
Nah, good point.
Silver linings. But yeah, man, I love it. I love the perspective. So can you talk to me about your first international trip? Did it stand out to you even? That first time going overseas, going having to use your passport? What did that feel like?
Well, my first international trip was actually, it wasn't that far of a trip, to be honest with you. I went to Bermuda, which from the East Coast is, you can get there in about 3 hours, a little bit less from
Right.
right. Yeah, right where we are. And I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with AirTran Airways before Southwest, I believe, acquired them. They used to have super cheap deals from Baltimore. And we ended up booking that one year to go to Bermuda for my mom's birthday. And
Oh, that's what's
yeah,
up.
so that was the first time I used my passport. And I mean, it was a good feeling to get that first stamp. And I can remember being there. And I mean, you just immediately pick up on like their accents and
Hmm.
how they're so close to us, but they still follow a lot of British traditions, I want to
Yeah.
say. It was similar, but it was still so different. It was in August. It was blazing hot out there, and it was also very expensive. I remember that, and you tend to find that about a lot of islands because everything is imported. So if they're not near anything, it's going to
Hmm.
cost a lot more for simple things that wouldn't cost that much, nearly as much at home, or if you were in like a major city in Europe somewhere.
Right.
So once I did that, I came back and I think the same, maybe, no, it was in like August. I think maybe the next year I went back again. I was like, let's do this again. It was so cheap. And I went with one of my friends. And after that, it was on. And I haven't stopped since then.
Okay. And like, what kind of rate are we talking about? Like 5, 10? How many countries have you averaged a year since then?
It varies, to be honest with you. I think last year or maybe 2016, I went to a lot more countries than I did last year. And even this year, it's funny because I was talking to someone yesterday and I mentioned that I hadn't gone out of the country since July. And she looked at me and she's like, I mean, you act like that was a long time ago, laughing
Right.
but I'm so used to going to so many places back to back. I want to say between 5 to 10 countries, maybe a
Okay.
year. I didn't used to ever do a country count, but I noticed that a lot of apps you use online require you to start doing it. So right now I'm at about 48 countries. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's, you look at some people and they're like well over 100 or something. And I'm like, this is crazy. But I don't have any desire to visit every country. I put that out there to everybody. Like, I don't want to.
That's fair. That's fair. And real quick, what kind of apps are you talking about? Because I mean, really, I think I might be floating around a dozen. I might be at a dozen countries. And I always say, like, I usually have the least number of countries with the people, compared to the people I'm interviewing. So I'm not
Right.
familiar with any country counting apps. What sort of apps are you talking about that people might be
Well,
interested in?
one in particular everyone uses is called Ben, like BEEN.
Okay.
Basically, what it does is it gives you a world map, but you list you can click every country that you've been to, and
Okay.
it gives you a world map with each of them colored in orange, the countries you've been to, and actually even the U.S. cities you've been to, and it will give you a percentage of the world that you've been to, the percentage of the U.S. states that you've been to, and then you can do a country count as well on there. So it's called Ben, yeah, BEEN.
That's awesome, man. I've never heard of that, but I have seen I think some graphics that it has produced. So, if you're a travel influencer, even if you just want the motivation to keep track, because sometimes you will forget once you start taking these
Right,
trips, especially
right.
hitting multiple countries or, just staying, one day in a city, you can forget. So that's
Yeah,
useful. That's the first time someone's mentioned an app like that. I appreciate it.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, so if you download it, it'll help you out if that's like one of the things that you're into. Because I know a lot of people like to keep account.
Some do. And that's why I asked, roughly how many countries you're hitting a year. Some people say, hey, I got to get out the country 5 times a year. And that's just their thing. And it
Right.
doesn't seem like that you're fixed on a number. It's more kind of about the opportunities and the experiences. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what it is. And then I mean, I follow so many of those sites that post deals all the time. So
Okay.
that pretty much determines where I'm going to go,
Right.
unless I set my heart and mind on a certain place. For instance, this year, well, the last few years, I've been really using a lot of my credit card points and miles with airlines and everything. So I'll just determine where I want to go and not sit around and wait on a deal to get there because I know I have the points to redeem and I can get there. So I'm really focused on Africa right now, and I'm trying to make the most of that in 2019 because no matter where I've been, it's immediately as soon as you get off the plane. Of course, it's us, but I think that your body and your soul knows that you're like home,
Hmm.
and you can feel it and you can tell. And I've had like the best experiences ever there that I've ever had traveling.
Likewise, bro. And because I want to dive into your experiences in Africa and the ones you're looking forward to as well. But because we're from a similar area in the States, I'm curious what your awareness of U.S. history was growing up. Because Baltimore is an interesting place when you look at the North and the South. And I'm from, the Mason-Dixon line, right?
Right, right, right.
Okay, so for those who might not know what the Mason-Dixon line is, it's an imaginary line, but it's actually pretty much the bottom part of Pennsylvania, that flat line right there. And that's pretty much the difference between the North and the South when it came to like Civil War times. What states allowed the use of enslaved people, what states didn't. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, those were free cities, free areas. Did knowing more of the cultural landscape of the United States help you identify differences when you were traveling domestically?
That's pretty hard to determine, but it was always it was funny to me when we read U.S. history and see where African Americans, the areas that they left and where they migrated.
Mm-hmm.
I know being in some Midwestern cities, I always laugh because I'm like, wait a minute, these people sound like they're from the South. Like, I'm like, they got this accent. I'm like, I'm in Chicago and they're talking like they're in, Charlotte or something like that. And it just shows when you begin to learn about different figures or families and you do research, you see, or just in school learning, you see that a lot of African Americans left the South and went to the Midwest to get away from really, really, really bad segregation and for better opportunities. It's funny as well when I do go north. You can go to Philly and I'll say something to someone about where I'm from, and they're like, "Oh, you from the country?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, we're right here." But yeah, that when you say it determines pretty much what the North and the South is. So you have a lot of people who think, immediately they say, "Oh, I'm going to Maryland." They're like, "Oh, we're going down south." And then they're like, "Oh, this is country."
Right, 100%. And I kind of share some of that too, like, because I was literally like born and raised a couple miles above that imaginary Mason-Dixon line that I mentioned before. So anything south of that to me automatically was the South. That could be Maryland, that could be, Chesapeake Bay in Virginia. So that always impacted how I saw different regions. I was already breaking it up in my mind. So when I observed it, I thought sometimes about the history that came before. So I was just curious if that was part of your experience too, because you mentioned you read books, you saw pictures,
Right.
and sometimes the education is a little bit different in that area where we're from. We're a little bit more forthright about the history, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I always I do get a little annoyed to realize how much of history or US history they actually tell us in school and
Mm,
how much we end up learning on our own because a lot of it can be pretty one-sided. It's just always mind-blowing to dig deep into history and realize that sometimes they taught you what they wanted you to learn. I always talk about how, I mean, of course Baltimore is a majority black city, and
hmm
even going to citywide schools like magnet schools, which had students from all different backgrounds. Only certain schools, I believe, teach a lot of African American history, like heavily.
Right.
Otherwise, the curriculum is the curriculum, and you're going to get like, just enough to say like you learned U.S. history. And I think like a lot of us, I personally didn't, but I sometimes think about what the experience would have been like to go to an HBCU because I think it gets really, really broken down there for most of us.
Bro, I feel you on that. I just put up a post not too long ago on Instagram and I was sharing some facts about myself. And I'm trying to make up reasons in my head to go back to school to have that experience because the people I meet from it just feel so empowered. They have so much pride. It's not all positive. Some people just out there anyway. I'm not saying go to an HBCU makes you a better person or a better black person, but it's really the environment for that, it seems like. And I've just been
Right,
impressed
right,
with how
right.
much knowledge and, just the posture of those individuals.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely say that. Like I've gone to a homecoming with some of my friends at HBCUs, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like just the whole community vibe and the pride and just the way everyone moves is pretty like amazing to me.
Yeah. And it's really funny that you mentioned, Africa as being that place for you, because it wasn't until I went there that I really felt that. Like you say, getting off the plane, you look around and everybody looks like you. Can you tell us about your first trip to an African country, where it was? Like, just get us in that vibe.
Well, my first trip to an African country was actually to Egypt. It wasn't a
Wow, we just gonna start in the problematic zone. Not
right.
shout out to
I mean,
Egypt, but can you talk about why that experience might be different than being in sub-Sahara? Like, talk about it, because I know you can.
yeah, definitely. Immediately, I mean, you already know you're in Africa, but
Right, and we agree on that. We agree on that because some
right.
Egyptians don't.
Right, and that's the point I'm making. But they don't look like what many would describe as the typical African.
Yeah.
And so I noticed that when we went south, we started to see darker people, and they would say like cousin, cousin, when they would see us and things like that, like
Yeah.
speaking to us, they would call us cousin or come here, brother, come here, brother. Whereas some of the people in, say, Cairo, they were kind of like just, oh, what's up type of thing. You definitely notice when you are looking at a lot of the statues and figures like on display in museums or just in public sites, the noses are blown off and so are the lips. And when you sit down and you really think about it, all the reasoning behind it is because they had African features, like, and if they can blow the noses off, you won't know that this person had a full nose, this king or
Right.
this queen, or look at their lips. You won't know that. You look at these movies and the kings and queens are like some fair skinned person with green eyes or something. And then you go into the tombs and you see all of this old art on the walls and they are just brown skinned, dark people
Really?
with full features. And you realize that there's a lot of history that they're trying to erase.
Yeah.
I knew I was in Africa. I had a great time. It wasn't an authentic African experience, if I could say that.
Okay, for you, it wasn't the most authentic, and I've heard that. I haven't been to the northern part of the continent at all, but I've been on trips with people who we've been in the sub-Saharan area together, and they said, I've been to Morocco, I've been to Egypt, I've been to Algeria, but this feels like the thing for me, being in sub-Saharan Africa.
I mean, when we got to Kenya, it was like, oh, we're home. You're walking down the street and everyone's looking at. I mean, it's a deep experience for some of us because they make small comments to you and they call you the stolen ones, or say welcome home. And sometimes you're moving so fast that you just like respond back and you're like, hey, thanks, haha, laughing. And then when you sit down at the end of the day, which I do often, I'll go back into my hotel room or wherever I'm staying and kind of like take in everything that I experienced during the day, because you're normally moving really fast if you're exploring places or doing a tour or this or that. But once you sit down and really think about what you just experienced and the way you were treated by the local people, it really hits you. I mean, to be called the stolen one, you're like, whoa, think about what they really meant.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're aware of the history, sometimes more than we are.
And I mean, I have to also say that there is a feeling of jealousy because they know exactly who they are and we don't. And they will ask you, so where are you from? And you'll say
Right.
like, yeah, I'm from, the U.S. I'm from Baltimore. And they're like, no, where are you really from? Most of us can't answer the question at all.
About none of us can.
Right. About none of us, because it's like
approximately.
No clue.
Yeah, that's true, man. It hurts a little bit because it comes from a place of curiosity, and sometimes they're aware of the history, but it doesn't sink in just what that severing of your lineage and those family ties really meant, because we don't have it like that. It's sometimes it hurts when at the end of the day, meeting all these great people, having these experiences, and you're like, damn, where am I from?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, and you can't even tell. So, I mean, I recently did the ancestry DNA test, and I mean, it reveals a lot. We still don't know how much of it.
I'm sorry. Which one did you do? Can you share some of that experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did the just the regular ancestry DNA kit.
Oh, so it's called ancestry DNA?
Yeah, they take a sample of your saliva and analyze it and send you back the results. And I mean, it's pretty much broken into percentages. But of course, the more information they get, the more people who participate, the better they can analyze everything and get more results, because I know for myself and a lot of people, the results came back, and a lot of people were like, oh man, I found out that I'm 40% Nigerian or this or that. And then they got more data to go by and they updated it. And everyone's like, wait a minute, my Nigerian percentage dropped to 5%, and now it's saying that it's Cameroon, something like that. So yeah,
Right.
it's
My Nigerian powers are diminishing. No.
right.
Right.
So now you really don't know once again, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, was it an emotional experience? It seems like you have a pretty level head about it all. You're able to kind of see the positive and the negative. What did you ultimately take away from doing that? What do you walk away with now when you look at all the information?
Well, when I first got the email that the results
Hmm.
were back, I was definitely nervous, because I'm just like, wait a minute, oh, this is the moment I've been waiting on.
Yeah.
Let me open this and see. And then, I mean, I think we all pretty much have in our head, like, an idea, just thinking. But, you're like, okay, so somewhere in West Africa, because of the way that the slave trade went.
Did you have a guess?
No, I really couldn't figure it out. And they were in the beginning, it was like Mali and Togo,
Yeah.
I want to say. And then when they updated it, it turned into saying like Cameroon. But Mali was still high up there along with Togo. So I'm starting to pretty much make plans to hit up all those countries with high percentages during a trip next year,
Okay.
because I want to experience it. I started Googling, the countries, looking at the people, and you're like, wait a minute, do I look like them? It's like this could be where I'm from. So yeah.
I think that's super dope, man. And I think it's also, it says a lot about you and your desire to find some sort of answers or some resolution to these questions that you have, because you're willing to, spend the money on the test. You're willing to organize, your own ancestry trip, not knowing what you're going to be fine, but being open to receiving whatever's there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at this point. I'm like, I want to know. I want to know as much as I can about myself and my family. Definitely.
Right, right. Have you asked your family about their history? Because that's another thing for us here in the States. We often don't talk a lot about our full, depending on where you come from. I know my family, we don't talk a lot about our history. So my mom's side, she can trace themselves back for, a few generations. My dad's side, not so much. Have you had this sort of discussion with your family?
Slightly. I think
Okay.
I am a lot more interested than they are, and I think a lot of it has to do with them. I mean, they've gone through enough to the point where I think they're kind of just like content now.
Hmm.
I don't think a lot of them want to relive the BS that they went through before, in order to really get to the bottom of who they are, so to
Hmm.
speak. Because I look at my parents, who are just getting into their 60s, and they have some stories they can tell you, about growing up, where it was just like, oh, you really went through that. And I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like when you're learning about it in school that it was forever ago, but nah, it was pretty recent. That's why I love the fact that so many young people are traveling now, because they didn't have the opportunity to do it at all. I mean, we have a lot more opportunities than our parents did, and I like to see us taking advantage of it.
Yeah, 100%, bro. And I've definitely seen similar responses, and I appreciate the amount of reverence and just empathy you have towards, your parents and those in your family who might not be, like you said, willing to relive that. I mean, imagine going. I know my dad; he's younger than your folks by a little bit, but he experienced race riots. Like your folks,
Right,
I'm not
right,
sure
right.
what they went through, but imagine, spending that money and having this good vibe, and someone asks you, okay, where do you come from? And that breaking up shadows of these, traumatic experiences.
Right,
That's a
right,
reality.
right. Yeah, definitely. And my like my mom's side of the family, the South. So,
Hmm.
like Salisbury, North Carolina. So they were in like, the cut in North Carolina, like, so they had instances where, might not have been the best experience with people of other races not giving you the type of respect that you deserved, or the opportunity.
Yeah, that's a real thing. And I
Yeah,
mean, everywhere.
definitely.
It's not just the South, like the East Coast. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, yeah, for real. Yeah, I mean, even here, they've got stories about when they, grew up in Baltimore, the stuff they went through.
Yeah, or Philly being the first place that the or was it Philly? They definitely bombed those blocks out. They used national military to bomb out the I feel like they were called powerhouses or something like that. And then things like Oklahoma. What was the group out in Oklahoma? Black Wall Street.
Yeah, right. Someone was talking about that on, I don't know, it was one day last week. They were just mentioning that. It's crazy.
Greenwood in Oklahoma. But yeah, that was a real thing. Philly, I think it was the middle of the 20th century where they bombed that place out. So yeah, history is important, y'all. Check out a book or something.
Yeah, I mean, and so I recently told someone as well. I'm like, books are good. I'll say that as well. Traveling has definitely taught me way more than like a book ever could, because you get to get hands on with it, and you really get to relive some of this stuff that you hear about or you think might have happened before. But especially, I mean, like to even go to Johannesburg and to realize that the apartheid that was real, and to go to the museums and everything and see stuff is just like, wait a minute, this wasn't even that long ago when this place was super segregated and they were, really killing people and everything.
Really in the thick of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where else have you been around Africa?
So Egypt, of course, to start off, Kenya, South
Mm-hmm.
Africa, Zanzibar,
Okay.
Ghana, and Nigeria is next.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, you got some countries under your belt. So a lot of Eastern, Southern, of course, with Josie. I've never been to Ghana before, but have you been to any of those, gate or port of no return sort of experiences? Do they have one in Ghana?
Yeah, they have. Well, I went to two slave castles, Cape Coast Castle and Almina Castle, and you see the doors of no return, and
Yeah.
they mention it to you like this was it. If the slaves even survived through the conditions in these places to the point that they made it to that door of no return, that was it. Before they got on those ships and were taken away. And it is crazy to describe. Most people wouldn't believe you when you mention it. So the castles are, of course, very old.
Mm-hmm.
A part of the way they were set up was intentional. There's no ventilation in some of these rooms. They are dark. There's no windows for any sunlight to come in. It's obviously hot areas because there's no way for air to get in. And it just went on for so many years. And I swear to anyone and others who were touring the castle when I went, there's still like a smell there because these people were urinating on themselves. I mean, everything. This is just how bad they were being treated. That's going to stick around no matter how much you try to wash it.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling. In one of those castles, I remember being in one of the rooms where they kept the women, and there's a staircase in the middle. And at the top of the staircase is the master's bedroom. And the guide is like, yeah, these are the stairs that they make the women come up so they could rape them. And I'm like, this is just crazy.
Yeah.
If you're not able to handle it, I don't recommend that someone goes, but it definitely is an experience that I think everyone should get.
Yeah, it can be very, very emotional. There could be some trigger warnings in there. And overall, sometimes, like you were describing the smell, like the vibe, the energy, you can feel things when you have these experiences. I know I have, and I know many others have said it. I mean, it moves some people to tears or they just break down.
Yeah, I've definitely heard their stories of people breaking down in there. And I mean, I can see why.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I'm so glad that you could share that experience. You're actually the first person to talk about that. And once I knew you had been to somewhere on the West, I was like, okay, maybe he's had this experience. And it seems like you're definitely the type of guy who would say, okay, I got to know, no matter, what I've heard about it before, I need to go see it for myself.
Yeah, I had to go. And it's funny because the guide that I had he's like, on the day that we go, we're not going to do much. He said, you're going to go to see the two castles. He said, and then after that, the other stuff that I want to show you, we'll do the next day. And he's like, because once you leave out of the castles, he's like, I don't know what mind frame you're going to be in. And he said, you're going to feel a certain way. He's like, so you're going to need to sit down and decompress and chill out for a while. And he was definitely right. I mean, after that, I went back to the hotel. I think went to the pool and had some drinks and chilled. I was like, I don't even want to go anywhere else.
Yeah, it's definitely not a pregame spot before you go out to the club. It's
Right,
and
right, right.
it's super it's real. I've in Cape Verde, I've had that experience, and it was what's really funny is, everybody's so eager to call you cousin and claim you as being from their area no matter where you go. Like
Right, right.
African people are just excited to see Black Americans. But you hear about the point of, the door of no return at Ghana, very popular, but Cape Verde had the exact same situation. So it's so
Mhm.
interesting the way that these histories were just almost like copy pasted on top of each other. It's intense no matter where you go.
Yeah, I mean, I've recently seen photos of someone in Senegal, and the same thing. And they're like, taking photos of those same types of places, and I'm just like, yeah, this is all over. And you mentioned that they are eager to call you, cousin and things like that. I think a lot of them are very, very happy to see us interested in coming back because a lot of them know that we are taught only one side of Africa, and I mean, to be honest with you, if you read the average textbook or look at the typical news report, we think that it's just some poor place where it's just like, I never want to go there because there's nothing there. These people are struggling. I don't want to go to this poor country.
Right.
But they don't ever show the real Africa a lot of times. And so many of these cities, you meet people who tell you they have absolutely no desire to come to America because they're living good, or
Yeah.
everything that they could ever want is there. So I mean, there are definitely some issues there and some areas that have problems, and they do lack a lot of resources, but they are so happy, and a lot of them are just prideful. They'll tell you like, my country is the best,
Yep.
and they're real with
Yep. And you'll hear that from 54 different perspectives,
it. Right.
all day, every day. And it's just the amount of pride, like you mentioned, the happiness, the fulfillment. And I think a lot of times, that comes from that sense of identity. Man, it blew my mind when I was in Botswana and I realized that people knew their family history so much that just by your last name and your tribe and the totem animal that was assigned, like it was deep. I was like, shit, I want a totem animal. Like, yo, get me in the system.
Yeah.
Um, and people are just, they're thrilled with it. That's the world. And I look at, my own personal life and, the situations of many of us young, Black millennials, as we're called. And it's like sometimes, we don't know who our dad is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, really, really.
That's real. And I think it makes a difference. And I'm so glad that you're speaking about this, all of this stuff, because this has been a part of my experience. I know it's real. And I know that hearing somebody else say it makes a difference because
Yeah.
otherwise you don't imagine it. You don't even have something to inspire you.
No, not at all. And I think that's important. Like that you said, somebody's got to hear it.
Yeah. And, I think a book or a podcast or a movie is a good point to get you that inspiration, the idea that something greater might be out there. And then you go and do it and get that firsthand experience like you were talking about.
Right.
I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, definitely.
Though, man, I really appreciate that. I fools with Africa heavy. I will be there for a long time. But I'm curious also to know, how do you travel? Do you have a certain profile as a traveler? Are you doing hostels? Do you always do group tours? What's kind of like your MO when you're actually exploring?
So I've actually never stayed in a hostel. And it's funny because I really can't give a particular reason. Because I know that most people think that if you're staying in a hostel, it's just like some cheap place that has, 10 people in a room and, you're just around a bunch of strangers and all kind of random stuff is going on. But, a lot of hostels, you can book a single room. You have
Mm-hmm.
your own bathroom. And it's really good for single travelers who are in places alone. So solo
Yeah, solo
travelers.
travelers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've just never done it. And but I know that if you are solo, they say like, go to a hostel bar because there's so many people there by themselves. And if you're looking to hang out with somebody or just meet people, that's the best place, for you to go. So I typically stay in hotels or Airbnbs.
Okay.
I don't like too many shared Airbnbs or when the host is there, even though they can be really beneficial because the host can tell you so much about the local area and you get a more hands-on experience, like a real local experience.
Yeah.
But I actually prefer most of the time to travel solo, and it's just the way I operate. When I get back in the room, some days I don't want to talk to anybody. If I don't want to make plans, I'm happy because I'm like, there's nobody expecting me to, wake up at 6
Yeah.
a.m. and get started on this long day of adventures. If I go out at night and I stay out too late, I can make my mind up when I get back in the room that, yeah, I'm just going to wake up at 12.
Right. If I feel like it, I might be here till 2.
Yeah, if I feel like it. Yeah, and nobody's going to tell me, yeah, you got to be up.
Right.
So that's me. I tend to travel solo, but I have friends that I travel with, and I mean we have great times. But everyone isn't always able to make certain trips with me, so I'll end up going by myself.
Okay.
So I'm a hotel guy, but sometimes if it's a long trip, the hotel room is going to drive you crazy because it's the same thing every day, not a lot of space if you were like in an Airbnb or something.
Right. Especially if you're not doing the resort thing or, staying in a super high end joint like a sort of villa vibe or something like that, a suite.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. So you're like, man, I'm looking at this same one bed and desk every day. And after a while, you're like, right, I need to get out of this room.
Right, 100%. Okay. So no hostels, a bit of solo travel, or mostly solo travel with a little bit of group experience. So you start off by, chasing the deal, catching your flight. And then, of course, now you have a few countries in mind when you mentioned your ancestry chart. So you chase the flight. How do you decide what you want to do? You mentioned being on some tours and stuff. Do you figure that out when you get there, or are you looking at reviews before you ever leave the country?
I normally look at the reviews. So you can go on. Well, there are so many groups now on Facebook, especially where if you go in there and you just type in the city,
Okay.
these travel groups like No Madness Travel Tribe or Black Travel Movement, different groups. You go there and you can type in, hey, I'm in, I don't know, Cape Town, and you see this list of places that you could, go, or people are just telling you what they did when they were there.
Right.
Or someone lives there, or someone will be there at the same time that you are there, which makes it, a lot easier to navigate or just find stuff to do. I always look at TripAdvisor as well, like, the top things to do in whatever city I'm heading to. But I don't normally go past like the first 5 or 6 things because after that, it's stupid stuff sometimes. Like it'll be a mall or like something that's not going to really be that interesting to me. So I think that the first 4 or 5 places are normally like, all right, this is where I definitely need to go. In most major cities, I like to search for free walking tours
Okay.
because it's normally with the local person. And they're like normally young. They work only on tips. So there's like a free walking tour. They'll give you a meeting point and you get like, 3, 4 hours of, a walk through the city by some local citizen who really has a lot of pride in their city and a lot of knowledge. And at the end, you tip them what you feel they were worth.
Right.
So I normally try to do that in the beginning day, like the first day there or so, because you're not going to learn a lot, but you get a good intro, especially if you're going to be walking around the city. You can learn different streets and where things are. And once you finish the walking tour, then, you're familiar with the areas and you can make your own way around without needing too much help. So yeah, I always tell people if you can get a free walking tour, then definitely get it. But recently, when I was in Lebanon, I signed up for a lot of tours because they were paid, but that's because the places we were going were so far out of Beirut that you had to ride a bus, and you needed a guide to get you around different places. So I guess it depends on what kind of traveler you are. Some people go places and don't really want to know a lot of the history. They just, we got a lot of people now who just go places because they want to be there and post that photo and say, hey, look at me, I'm in such and such, and never do much. But
Right.
I try to get a lot in.
It sounds like it. Do you do any research beforehand? Especially when I'm traveling through African countries, because of the business I was doing, I wanted to be as culturally like on point as possible. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at Wikipedia. I want to see their president. I want to see what their economy is made of, learn something about their history. And then it's been a great way to connect with people because people are like, oh, you actually know a little bit? And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they're like impressed and they're really excited if you show them that you know something about the place that you're visiting. They get really, really wide eyed and excited if they start to tell you something about their city or the history and the politics and this or that. And you can say, oh, yeah, I read that, or that's so and so. This is your president. These are your officials in the city, or this is your history. And
Yeah.
they like, oh, you know that? So, they like it because it shows that you are genuinely interested in where you are and its people or its history and culture.
100%. And they know so much about our situation that, I mean, could you speak on that? Like how influential, let's talk about Black culture specifically. What has been the influence of Black American culture that you've noticed abroad, bro?
First of all, no matter where you are, the fashion is like you'll laugh some places because these people will look nothing like us. But then to see the way they're dressed, it's funny because I'm like, they've been looking at too many music videos. Like, this is
Right.
they're trying to look like us. They're trying to be down, so to speak. I mean, you admire it because they're so interested and obsessed with a lot of our culture. Hip hop. I tell anybody, hip hop runs the world. I don't care where you are. When it comes on, everybody tends to just like lose their mind. The dance floor gets packed, or they just know all the songs.
Yeah, all the words.
Yeah, all the words. It tripped me out to be in Tokyo and the club is all hip hop, and
Shit, they've been practicing out there too. They don't fool around.
I mean, they can dance like crazy. They just like they are ready. They love it. So yeah, it was funny when I was in Ghana because every day I would come out of my hotel to go in the car with the driver, and one of the security guards would just be sitting back, like snickering and smiling, and I would speak to him and he would speak. And then I noticed he started like to talk in the local language to my driver on some days. And when I got in the car, my driver would laugh and he said he likes the way you move. He said, it's something about the way Americans move. I guess the word that we used to use here at one point was like, like swagger or something. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah.
But they like, he would just laugh because it's like, they say like, oh, you're so chill, and this or that. So it's funny because we got a lot more influence than we realize, which is also why I always tell people that they need to travel because people are always interested in who we are. And they want to know a lot about us that they wouldn't otherwise know. Yeah, definitely get out there and show people who we are and show people that a lot of the stereotypes are false. They're wrong.
Yeah, and that's a big deal too. And I have a lot of respect because I understand the way that you move, or I'm learning to understand the way that you've moved through these countries, trying to get the history, trying to have these great, meaningful exchanges with people. And that makes us all look good because not everybody travels like you or, some of the other guests we've had who do it in such a reverent, respectful way where they get a lot out of the trip, but they also give too. Some people just trying to post up with that one outfit they brought, post up at that one, IG pick place and, dip.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, a lot of people, I'm not going to knock them, but yeah, I mean, that's just not my style of travel. So.
Hey, different strokes. I'm sure there's a podcast for them too. Just not very familiar with it. So last thing before we kind of change directions, why do you think it's important for Black men of color to travel? What has it added to you to be a traveled Black man?
Well, one of the things I mentioned in one of the articles I did recently, it makes me way more appreciative of home. And it also has helped me to inspire other people. I am always shocked because, I mean, we are not taught as Black men to compliment other Black men. We just don't. It catches me off guard when you get that message from someone saying, oh, my God, man, I just came across your page and I think it's so dope to see you traveling the world. This is an inspiration to me. And, you're like, whoa, because you know how hard it is for another Black man to walk up to another, to walk up to each other and say, man, I really admire you, or, I really like that outfit or this or that. Like, we just don't do it. And it's really sad.
Yeah.
So it has helped me to be an inspiration to other people. I think that's a part of my purpose anyway. I always say that. I don't know if it's just through traveling or what, but I know that part of my purpose is to inspire other people. I think it's just my mentality about living and everything that a lot of people can get some inspiration from. And I also love the fact that there are so many of us traveling who are getting recognized online by, local, national, and international outlets, because I always think about this, the image of a Black man that not just the US sees often, but the world is always like a mugshot, a wanted poster, or just like some video of us doing some type of illegal activity. The more positive images of Black men that are put out there, it gives me like a pride because I'm like, stop making it seem like all of us are about something, negative. Show the positive. I mean, you'll be surprised who's actually watching because, I mean, I mentioned that, a lot of Black men or Black women may hit me up, but there are people from all different races paying attention and inspired by you. And I don't know, man, just kill these stereotypes and put positivity out there for people to see and not negative images all the time.
Yeah, man. I even love and really appreciate the way that you phrased it. You didn't say what sort of negative activities we've been doing. Like I would have had a quick list, but you just described it as negative, and you just talked about the inverse as positive. And I think by leaving it neutral and open to interpretation, we allow more people to feel that courage to take that step. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I mean, what I might think is something negative, the next person wouldn't ever think, is a negative image. But I think the media always looks for the worst. Whatever just looks like it's gonna make someone turn their nose up or, frown. That's what they put out there. And that's why we have this negative image of us. And I'm like, nah, we're out here getting it. Show that.
Yeah, for real. And dude, you're one of the ones out there. I'm glad you had some time to hang with us on the show. So tell us what you got coming up, bro. What are the next countries you're hitting? What kind of projects you got going on? You've been in the news. Let's talk about it all.
Yeah, so I'm definitely working on getting this website relaunched. I think we all sometimes tend to procrastinate or just slow up on things once we get started. And I don't think I realized just how many people were checking it out. And I'll say this to anyone who is even thinking about being like, or who wants to be a blogger or showcase their travels or just anything about them online. Instagram is good. Facebook is good. Twitter, Snapchat, all of that. But we need our own platform so that you can guide someone directly to you. This is me. Check out my website, beyondbmore.com. Instead of saying, oh, do you have Instagram? And then suppose the person doesn't have that app. They'll never be able to see you, the real you, because they won't download the app and look at it. My parents don't have Instagram, and the majority of my posts are on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm getting noticed. And I'm like, wait a minute, I need to get back on this website kick so that can be the first thing I suggest people check out. So I'm working on that. I have a couple more interviews coming up with some different people. Nigeria is actually New Year's.
Bro, that's going to be lit.
Yeah, so that's like coming up soon. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I got to start planning for that next. And thinking about some YouTube. So we'll see.
Okay, mix up the platforms, mix up the media. And that is really good advice about having your standalone website, because even if people don't have the apps and stuff like that, what if Instagram shuts down tomorrow? How are you still able to maintain your footing, all the work and all the stuff you've accomplished?
Yeah, that's what I always think about that. If it shuts down or something happens where everything is deleted, it's like, whoa, I have nothing to show anymore. And we take a lot of time into coming up with these posts and especially like the captions or the stories that we tell. And I'm thinking like, why not? I mean, we need to just have someone going back to, our site. That's our name, not Instagram's platform. We're making them bigger when we can be making ourselves bigger.
That's true. So while people are leveraging these social platforms, make sure you have a way to capture that, if anything were to happen, and to build your own, foundation. I think that's sage business advice coming from another young entrepreneur here, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, man. Well, that's all the time we have today. Dude, thank you so much for everything you shared, your positivity. This is exactly the vibe that I love having on the show. I love, promoting and talking about it. And all of our guests have been this way. You're no exception. And I hope we can have you back for, another round at Point Noir, bro.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And anytime, just hit me up. I'll make sure I'm available.
Will do, man. So, did you like it? Did you love it? Did you learn something? I definitely hope you did, and I really appreciated having Brian on the show. Thank you so much, bro. Y'all, make sure you follow him on IG at BeyondBmore and his personal website, beyondbmore.com. Since we did the interview, he has definitely put in the work to get that site up and going. He's got amazing shots, amazing perspective, so do yourself a favor, check it out. We stumbled over a couple of history facts in there, so I just wanted to correct two of them. Tulsa, Oklahoma is where Black Wall Street was, and the MOVE movement was the one that was bombed by the cops in Philadelphia in the 80s. So in case you guys are interested about those topics, do your Googles. Just wanted to correct those things. As I was editing the show, I realized, hey, we weren't very clear on that. So those are kind of important things to know, and if you're unfamiliar with them, definitely fascinating things to research. So that's the end of today's session, Dirty 30. We're in it. Felt good, feels great. I really enjoy doing the show, and I appreciate everyone that listens every week. And again, we are desperately searching for men of color to give passports to every month. So please check out the IG page at Point Noir Show. And if you're confused about anything on there, just shoot us a DM. I will respond to you right away. So that all being said, as always, I'm Jerry the Third, aka Kimono Jack. I'll see you guys next week. It's time to sign off, y'all. Peace.